cops always see people on their worst days. They don't see a true representation of the community. You don't see families so much celebrating graduations and birthdays. You see people having the worst day of your life. So it absolutely does start to weigh on you. You do start to see a community as more criminal than it is because by and large, all you're dealing with are criminals and victims. Training, education, perhaps even therapy, all these things play a factor, but I don't got a good answer to your question, for cops or for anybody.
How do you think the racial disparity problem should be dealt with? You say more proactive policing, more engagement, and you go where the crime is, so it's a geographic location of resources, but you also intensify, you've chased down warrants and whatnot. And in any of this, you're going to get a racial disparity, and that's going to be a political problem. How do you think it should be dealt with?
I think you got to deal with the community at one level and with the politics at a tangential but different level. Also polling data shows that Black communities want more policing more than white communities do. More and better. It's not that complicated of a position. But if you don't feel safe leaving your house, almost every other concern pales in comparison, sort of somewhere on the hierarchy of needs. Basic feeling of public safety is very high up on that list. So from a police so first of all, I'm saying police are, by and large, welcomed in these communities. Now, police can mess up that trust. So you have to be open about your strategies. This is what we're doing it. You're never going to have a 100% success ratio and only targeting the people you're trying to target. You have to explain it and say, look, this is why, and then it has to work. And so it can't just be from the organization standpoint. It can't just be stat-based. Sure, you've got a problem of, say, street prostitution. Okay, well, we made this many arrests. Well, did that solve the problem? And if the answer is no, then the arrests are not just pointless, but probably counterproductive, whether you're arresting the sex workers or the Johns. It has to be focused on a very, a stated goal for whatever problem it is, be it public prostitution, be it shooting violence, be it turnstile jumping, be it public injection. You have to define the problem correctly. And in a way, make sure that it's narrow enough that you can actually achieve it. I mean, you go after repeat violent offenders as part of it. Then you need cooperation with prosecutors. Because if you catch somebody who has a bunch of bodies to his name, you might have caught him for something small, but you say, this is that major player. We have to take him seriously. So we do want to throw the book at him. Even if it's even if the crime is just nonviolent gun possession by a felon or something. And then, and politically you have to explain it the same way, but you have to make sure that, a lot of the louder activist class does not represent the community. So that's what I mean. If you go into the churches, you're going to get a very different response than if you talk to protesters outside City Hall. So you have to address both of them. But it's about transparency, it's about accountability, and it's about listening to the problems that people are actually having on their block and in their neighborhood.
The homicide numbers are really amazing to me in terms of this transformation from nearly 2,000 a year to under
300. Well, yeah,
under 300.
Yeah, 292 in 2017.
What's going on there? Is there something specific to homicide? What are the clearance rates like? What about witness cooperation and witness intimidation and stuff like that? What about don't snitch and that kind of mentality? What about gangs? What about weapons? How are they implicated, if at all, in the remarkable transformation of homicide numbers? And as you point out, in the still existing geographic variation across regions of the United States and the intensity of homicide.
I focus on a few cities. I mean, Chicago because I was born there, and New York because I live here, Baltimore because I work there. I don't know what's going on in a lot of these cities, honestly. But whenever I do look in one, there often is a strategy. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Now in New York City, because I've been researching it for so long and so in depth, some of it did involve locking up repeat violent offenders. Incarceration did play a role. Now that, in turn, takes some potentially bad role models off the street. That might have a knockdown effect. Some of it was enforcing gun laws. The streets were de-escalated. Especially now, there's a lot of talk, and you see it from progressive prosecutors. You see it from public defenders who don't want gun laws enforced, again, because of racial disparities. But I don't know, you can't address murder in American cities We can't ignore those racial disparities.
Of victimization or of perpetration?
Both. I mean, it's more polite to talk. I mean, to talk about victimization, partly because we know better. We don't know for sure the race of all the offenders, but it's intra-racial, most crime. So there are some innocent victims of robbery or carjackings, but by and large, the victim, the Venn diagram between victim and offender is heavily overlapped when it comes to shootings and murders, and it is almost exclusively in cities non-white, which I also, and it's Black or Hispanic. There's also non-Asian. I mean, the disparity, the shooting victims in New York City are 95% Black or Hispanic, and I bet my life is the same in Chicago. I mean, that's 95%. Not 100%, but we're getting pretty close there. So any focus on shootings and violence is going to reflect that racial disparity, which is, why you have to be careful too.
How do cops avoid falling into a stereotyping thing, given the stark racial coloration of one of the major offending things that they have to be concerned about stopping and not being victimized by? How do they not become racist, quote unquote? I don't mean disparagement. I just literally mean using race as a part indicator of danger and conditioning their behavior accordingly.
How does anybody, Glenn? I mean, seriously, I think the same way and with the same level of effectiveness or ineffectiveness of doing so. I will say from my experience policing in East Baltimore, America is so segregated that the odds are you are working in a community that is not integrated. Even the most closed-minded bigot I would find it hard not to make some distinction between the hundreds and thousands of people you run across in any one community. If you work in an all-Black community, you're going to see the incredible diversity in that community, whether you want to or not. If everyone is Black, I think you will start to not just see race, because there are almost no white people in a lot of these neighborhoods, except for some cops and teachers and, government employees. So that's part of it. But it's not easy. I don't know. Of course, yeah. Cops always see people on their worst days. They don't see a true representation of the community. You don't see families so much celebrating, graduations and birthdays. You see people having the worst day of your life. So it absolutely does start to weigh on you. And yeah, I think you do start to see a community as more criminal than it is, because by and large, all you're dealing with are criminals and victims. Training, education, perhaps even therapy, all these things play a factor, but I don't got a good answer to your question, for cops or for anyone.